Okay, so we're gonna start Bezrat Hashem. Okay, fine. Let me just put in the thing starting now on the broadcast.
Beautiful voice. What music? Yeah.
Okay, fine. So Pesach. Pesach is so okay, fine. Safta. Okay. Again. Okay, beseder. So Pesach is coming very soon. So one of the important things to realize is that we have Pesach is really 7 days, but we do 8 days because we're mechutz la'aretz, we're outside of Israel, so therefore we do another extra day, and we also have 2 days of the Yom Tov. In Eretz Yisrael, they have one day, so that's why for them it's 7 days. For us, it's 8 days. Now, the whole idea of Pesach is the fact that Hashem took us out of Egypt, Yetziat Mitzrayim, and that's what we talk about on Leila Seder, and we spoke about that in the Shiur of the Haggadah. That the idea is basically that a person has to really feel that he came out of Mitzrayim, that he came out of Egypt when he's reciting over the Haggadah, and that's the whole point of Pesach. Now we know that the main thing, obviously, is no chametz. We eat matzah, and we tell the story of the Haggadah and so many other things. So, what is chametz? Chametz is there are 5 grains that can become chametz. There's chita, which is wheat, seorah, which is barley, shufan, which is rye, shibolet, shual, which is oats, and kosemet, which is spelt. So these things, when they are in any mixture of these grains with water and that's left unbaked for more than 18 minutes, they become chametz. And that's basically how we make bread and other things. Now, so common examples of what is chametz is bread, pita, challah, very well known. Crackers, pretzels, cakes, cookies, muffins, donuts. Also pasta. Pasta is also chametz. Yeah. Popcorn. Well, popcorn. It depends. We'll talk about other things. Beer, whiskey, malt, and vinegar. So whiskey, we'll talk about, and obviously a lot of cereals. You need to make sure you get kosher for Passover, and any processed foods containing wheat, barley, rye, oats, and other things. But basically, a person has to make sure. We'll talk about this, but a person has to make sure that what they get, what they buy, has a certification that says kosher for Passover. It has a from the OU has a P on it. That means it's kosher for Passover. Ideally, now let's see. So even tiny amounts of chametz are forbidden on Pesach. This includes crumbs, and we'll talk about why. So even mixtures, if you have a mixture of chametz together with something that's kosher for Passover, there's no such thing. It's not what's called batel b'shishim. What is batel b'shishim? It means if you have, let's say, you have soup and a piece of pig comes into the soup, then it's batel b'shishim, and you're still allowed to eat it. It's basically it's null and void because there's more of the kosher stuff than the non-kosher stuff. However, when it comes to baking and flour, that does not apply when it comes to chametz. It also doesn't apply when it comes to kemach yashan, meaning having wheat that is harvested within the winter, which makes it old versus new. That also doesn't. That also is not mitbatel b'shishim. So a person also during the year has to be careful of that. But with chametz also. So now, when we come to Pesach, there are things that's obviously chametz gamur, which is like bread, cookies, stuff like that, crackers. Those are full on chametz. Then there are things that contain like certain ingredients that can be chametz, or maybe they didn't certify it kosher. So those things are not as like sauces, like soy sauce and other things like that. Those things are a bit different, have a different thing. So the whole idea is that there is a there is a there is a prohibition of eating chametz, and there's also a prohibition of owning chametz. That's why we all clean. That's why we all clean our houses like crazy, and even it says that a person has to search in the crevices of the floor to find crumbs. Why do we get rid of it? Because a person, if you have a crumb and you own that crumb, so and if that's chametz, then you own chametz. So that's why. So and how do we know that a person is not only supposed to eat chametz And also it says lo techelu chametz. It says that in the Torah, and also then it says v'lo yira'eh lecha se'or b'chol gibulecha. And the sages learned from that that means that you're not supposed to own chametz. So two Torah prohibitions. Now, if a person eats chametz, we talked about this last time that it is isur karet. It's a very serious prohibition of eating chametz. Is a very serious prohibition. One of the 36 serious prohibitions that is a spiritual cut. So a person has to be very, very careful, and this is why people go crazy when it comes to getting themselves ready this week for Passover. Now, what about owning chametz? If somebody owned chametz, it's not karet; it's a prohibition from the Torah. However, if somebody has chametz that they owned, then that chametz is after Pesach, it's not kosher, and a person needs to throw it out. It's never going to be kosher. So now you have things like whiskey and beer and stuff like that. If you owned it on Passover, you can never all that whiskey, however much it costed, to the garbage. So what do? We do what's called selling the chametz. So there is a idea. So there is a way that we can leave our chametz at home and sell it, and it's a real sale. Now, what I remember Aaron Abraham used to do, he used to, by the way, this shiur is going to be לעילוי נשמת אהרון בן יוסף חיים ומסעודה חיה רבקה וגם סבי חדיר אליאס בן אברהם וחביבה, בעזרת השם. Because the yard sites on Sunday for Aaron, and then my grandfather's the week after. Okay, so Aaron what he used to do is he used to give Mona he used to give Mona he used to tell Mona, oh, buy the chametz from all of us and for the synagogue. That's what he used to do, and he used to give her cash back. Now, ideally, that is one way of doing it. However, really, it's best. It's so complicated, the sale of chametz. So it's better to what we do is we go to a rabbi, and the rabbi knows the laws of how to sell to a goy properly, to a non-Jew properly. And with that said, there's different opinions on how to do it. So that's why we do what's called, we sign a power of attorney to the rabbi. We specify where we put all our chametz, whether it's cereals, bread, and stuff, or whatever, cereals or stuff like that. We specify where we put the chametz, and then it basically is not ours anymore when they go and do the sale. They usually do it before Pesach, which this year they're going to do it on Friday. And they go and sell it, and what happens is that it's basically not ours. Now, if a person goes and eats from that food, then they're basically stealing because it's not their food. That's the point. People think, oh, it's just a little thing, you sign it. No, it's a real sale, and the food is not yours. Because if you own the food, then it's not kosher. So here's the big question. Now, everybody probably knows this. Now, here's the big question that comes about. Should a person ideally sell things like bread, cookies, crackers, what we call chametz gamur, full-on chametz, that it's 100% chametz? Should a person sell these things? Realistically, they should not. Realistically, if in the time of Corona, when there was a lack of food and there was so much craziness going on with the pandemic, then the rabbi said that they should sell bread and stuff like that. But usually, a person should not sell bread. The person should throw these things out. And happens to be in my whole house, there are tons of things that we're gonna have to either put out for like on the street and put free, no strings attached, or we're just gonna have to throw it out. But the point is that when it comes to bread, cookies, crackers, stuff like that, it is much better to throw those things out than sell it. And that's what we do. Sfaradim are very makpid on this, to sell what's called chametz gamur. Sorry, not sell, to throw out chametz gamur versus sell. What about soy sauces, whiskey, stuff like that? A person should sell those things. Whiskey, for example, it's a very expensive item, right? So that's called hefsed mamon, that it is a monetary loss. And with that said, a monetary loss, you could sell it, and then it gets bought back. Now, at the end of Pesach, a person has to wait some time for the rabbis to buy back the chametz so that it becomes yours. Otherwise, as we said, it's stealing. So now let's continue. Any questions on that? Yeah.
Something else.
Okay.
It's been controversial for years. Ashkenazis and Sephardic, I'm half and half, so
Right.
eat different foods on Passover, right?
Right.
Is the Sephardics allowed? Because some people say yes, no. Okay.
Kidneyot?
Yeah,
Rice,
like
kitniot?
rice and
Yeah. Okay,
hummus and
so actually by what?
Ashkenazi eat cheese.
Yeah.
I eat kosher pesto with cheese, but I think
Right. So regarding kitniot and stuff like that, kitniot rice and stuff like that, a lot different people have different minhagim. By Iraqis specifically, there are some that do not eat kitniot, and there are some that do eat kitniot. Meaning there are some that eat like different, like different types of like rice and stuff like that. So there are Iraqis that held not to, and then it's a machloket for Iraqis. Rav Menashe alav shalom used to eat kitniot, and he ate rice. And his daughters used to do that before one of his daughters married Moroccan. So once she married Moroccan, then she can't do that anymore. Because Moroccans do like Ashkenazim, they don't eat any kitniot. But Iraqis, as far as Rav Menashe used to eat kitniot, so I therefore eat kitniot.
So kitniyot's like peanut butter. I mean, you could eat like peanut butter.
Well, let's talk about that. Anything that you buy, ideally, should have a certification kosher for Passover. Yes, a person can go and maybe eat these things and it will be perfectly fine, but why take the chance? It's a really big it's a big risk. As we said, it's a very serious prohibition of eating chametz. So it's better that every single thing, even sodas, even cola, sodas, seltzer, right, they do. So a person should ideally make sure that everything they have in their home that they're going to use for the whole week of Passover is kosher for Passover. Ideally, that it has a certification from the OU or from another place that it is kosher for Passover. That is the best thing to do. Some say also kitniot. So for Ashkenazim, they if it says kitniot, then they won't eat it. Sometimes I've seen people that they have these things that they think is kosher for Passover, and it says not including Pesach, and then they have it on Pesach. It's so people have to be very, very careful with these things.
See, there was I went to Chosen, Chosen,
Yeah.
in Cedarhurst. Like
Okay.
20 years ago, I lived there.
Yeah.
And they had soda, and it said kosher for Passover, but it said high fructose corn syrup in it.
Right, but they make sure that it's kosher for Passover. They have a
It said high fructose corn syrup. But Ashkenazis have corn syrup, I think, right?
No, not necessarily. Iraqis, I know we eat corn. As far as I know, we eat corn, I believe. But yeah. Okay, so that's basically when it comes to owning, selling chametz. So as we said, very important it's better if a person has a lot of bread, a lot of pasta, a lot of cookies, crackers, and stuff like that. A person should throw those things away versus selling. A person sauces and stuff like that, or certain drinks and stuff like that it's better to sell. Especially the whiskey, a person should sell it. But if a person did not sell it, did not do the sale, meaning if a person did not go to a rabbi and sign it, meaning sign a document, specify and everything, then the problem is that you may be owning that chametz on Pesach, and then you might have the problem of that it's not kosher anymore. So fine, that's basically owning, selling, and stuff like that. Before we get into Erev Pesach, yeah, sure.
The owner of the property, but you have a tenant that's living there. Do you that address when you're selling your chametz?
No, because technically that food is not your food. If you would go and eat their food, that's basically stealing. So it's their food, realistically. But what if you rent same thing. If you rent a place, you also have to make sure that you either throw out or sell. So that's what we rent a place. So that's what my wife and I are doing. We have a lot of pasta, for example, to throw out. But yeah, so a lot of stuff was going to. I remember last year when my friend and I we were living together. We had like 2, 3 big gigantic boxes of stuff that just went into the fire pit or into the garbage. That's what happens. But in the end of the day, the idea is like this. Now we'll talk about the musal part of it, the ethics part of it. The idea is that where does all this food come from? It comes from Hashem. Hashem is the one that gives us the monetary means and whatnot to be able to buy and afford our food. So in the end of the day, Hashem is telling us to go and okay. So Hashem is telling us to go and throw away our chametz, get rid of our chametz, burn our chametz, and eat only kasher Pesach. So we have to have trust in Hashem. It's the same idea with what's called Shemitah in the land of Israel, not in anywhere else, but in the land of Israel, where they have to not harvest the field for a whole year on the 7th year. And that's also a test of trusting in Hashem. So Now let's talk about utensils and koshering utensils and stuff like that. So to make it short, there could be a whole lecture on this, but to make it short, when it comes to utensils, the best really is if a person can have utensils specifically for Passover that they store all year and they put out on Passover. That is the best idea. Otherwise, if not, then what you could do is there's two things: hagalat kelim and libun. So hagalat kelim is basically when you boil the dish in water to nullify and get rid of all of the chametz in it. That's what somebody could do.
With the
How?
rocks, right?
What?
My mother used to do that. With the rocks, they put rocks.
No, not rocks. That's different. But with water, you boil water and you boil it for you leave it. You have to leave it untouched for 24 hours. You boil water in the pot or whatever, and or the dish, and then it becomes then it's good to use for Passover. The same thing if somebody also has a dairy dish and a meat dish, same idea. What about the oven? So the oven, you can't do the same thing. The oven, what you do is you have to do what's called libun. So there's two ideas. If you cook something with just a dry fire with the fire itself, then you have to also kosher it with that fire. Same thing with boil. If you boil something, if you use a dish for boiling stuff and whatnot, then you have to also kosher it the same way. You have to boil that dish. Now, when it comes to the oven, for example, a person should clean the racks, take out the racks, clean the racks. If a person has extra set of racks to use for Passover, even better. And then the rest of the oven they should clean with oven cleaner, and then put the oven on the highest temperature that the oven can take. Put it on for an hour, and then that's it. But also, I forgot to mention before that, person should make sure that the oven wasn't used for 24 hours, and then do this process. Microwave also, a person can spray, heat up soap, and then the same thing. As far as toasters, same idea also. If depending on the toaster, a person should do that if they want to use a toaster. The best thing, if a person can afford it, is to have different things that they use for Passover. That's usually the best thing. A lot of people have a whole storage. What? Yeah. Yeah, the best thing is to have dishes and tools and stuff like that, cooking materials that are just for Passover that you store over the year. That is the best thing to do. So that's when it comes to kashering. Now, also another thing, never sell dishes. Never sell any sort of utensils, dishes, and stuff like that, because once you do that, then you have to go and tovel it in the mikveh again. So a person doesn't sell, they just clean it. If let's say they have chametz dishes that they're not going to use, just clean it, just do a cleaning, and that's it. Then you don't use it, that's it. Now, let's continue on. Any questions about that? Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
The Ashkenazi always say, throw the bread in the toilet.
So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
I'll talk about that later. We'll talk about it. That's what we're getting into right now, actually. So what now? Come Erev Pesach, which this year it's on Shabbat, so it's a bit different. So usually we do the bi'ur chametz, the bedikat chametz and bi'ur chametz. We do that on Yud Daled Ben Nisan, which is the 14th of Nisan. Yud Daled Gematria 14. So we do that on the 14th of Nisan. This year it's on Shabbat, however, so we're not doing it on Shabbat. We do it the night before, which is Yud Gimel Ben Nisan, the 13th of Nisan. So we do it on that day. Now, what we do is, so I'll explain. During the usual years, what we do is we make a blessing of biur chametz before we hide chametz in the house, and then we make a blessing on Sheki Deshanu b'misotav v'tzivanu al biur chametz. We search for chametz, and once we found all the chametz, now just to clarify, when a person is searching for chametz and doing the finding of chametz, the Ashkenazim use a feather and a candle. So we don't use a feather, but Ben Ish Chai says to use a candle. However, because the candle can be very unsafe in fire and whatnot, and we don't want that to happen, we use a flashlight. Sfaradim, I heard recently that they use also a knife and some salt and a flashlight. That's the best way to do it. Now, when it comes to biur chametz, when a person makes the blessing on biur chametz, usually the men do this, and then they have the kids get involved or whatnot. A person should not talk anything outside of looking for the chametz. And once they find, and the person should also, the Ben Ish Chai writes that a person should spend a lot of time, not just 5 minutes, but even an hour, 2 hours, looking for chametz, really looking for chametz, and it's a big sgula, it's a big merit to do such a thing, to spend a lot of time looking for the chametz. Why? Because when we get rid of the chametz, we get rid of all the bad character, bad midot, all these bad things. We get rid of that, and I'll explain. Another thing just to mention, what is chametz realistically? It's matzah, but it's inflamed, and that becomes challah. So what is it inflamed with? With our haughtiness, with our egos, with our bad character. So we get rid of that bad character. Now you're gonna ask me probably, so why do we eat bread all year round if that's the case? So the truth is that chametz, what's considered chametz, only becomes chametz during Pesach. The rest of the year, it's not Pesach. What does that mean? That there's an impurity inside bread and all these other things during Pesach. But after Pesach, it's all gone. You can eat it normally. That's why we don't eat these things on Pesach. So back to biur chametz. Persons should look for chametz. Once they find everything, they make a nullification, which is called kol chamila de akabishut. There's two of them. One is the nullification, so we mevatel the chametz, we nullify the chametz, but then a person could still eat chametz. Then the next day, if you have a fire pit, a lot of communities in different Jewish communities make fire pits, and they burn the chametz. So during the day after Tfilat Shachrit, we burn the chametz, and that's called the biur. That's the biur chametz we do. Now, when we do that, we burn the chametz. We try to get rid of all our chametz at that point and have nothing left, and then we make the declaration that we are declaring that we no longer have any chametz, and whatever is chametz that we didn't see is basically the dust of the earth. So basically, that's what we do at that point. This year, however, because on Shabbat is Erev Pesach, we don't do it like this. So we do everything the same. Besides, when we burn the chametz, we don't make any declaration after. We say the kavanah to burn the chametz. We go burn chametz in the fire, and Friday, right? Friday morning, we go burn the chametz, but we don't make the declaration that we got rid of all our chametz, because at that point, then you'd have to get rid of all the chametz. So we don't do that. We do that Shabbat morning, and I'll explain further. Now, even though we burn all our chametz, whether it's bread, whether it's this, another thing, there's a minhag to burn the lulav from Sukkot. If somebody has their lulav from Sukkot, then they go and burn it also with the chametz. So just a side note. So after we burn the chametz, you have to keep an amount of bread, specifically pita, so that you could use for the Shabbat meals. As we said last time, there's a debate between many of the poskim. The Sfaradim poskim, specifically Rav Ovadia Yosef and the Ben Ish Chai, disagree. Rav Ovadia says that when you have a year like this, you can eat egg matzah for all the meals, for the night meal, the day meal, and the third meal on Shabbat. However, a person, if they're going to eat egg matzah, then they have to have a lot of it, so that it's an amount that you can make on a meal. Other poskim like Rav Ben Zion Abashul, the Ben Ish Chai, disagree, and Ashkenazim also disagree, and they say no, you have to eat actual bread. So what do? We have pitot, because pita is less messy than challah. A person can also have challah, but they have to make sure that it gets cleaned up. So for Friday night, Shabbat night, a person has pitot or challah, depending on how many people you have at home that you're feeding. You could have a couple pitot. So you have pita, you wash on pita, you make hamotzi and eat your bread. Once you do that, you make sure you eat all the bread and the crumbs. What you do is you have a disposable tablecloth under the regular tablecloth. All the crumbs go there. Take the tablecloth off after you're done eating the bread, and then that's when you put it in the toilet. The crumbs you're allowed to put it in the toilet. It's not considered bal tashchit, wasting of food. You put the crumbs in the toilet and then you flush it. Now, you can't get rid of every single crumb just because you shake it out in the toilet. So what do? You Windex the disposable tablecloth and you put it in the garbage. You don't have to worry about putting it in the garbage that's going to get collected. If it doesn't get collected, it's fine. It's not considered that you had chametz because you basically nullified it in a different way. That's what you do for the night meal and for the day meal. Now, the day meal, a person has to wake up early. Men and women, usually men pray nets. They pray very early so that they can make it to eat the second meal with the bread. It's because you only have until what is it? You have until around 10 o'clock, 10ish. Right, around that time, you have around that time to eat chametz, and then you have another hour to then get rid of all the chametz. But to eat is a different thing. Yeah, you have a question?
No, I was asking Oliver, I don't come Saturdays, but what do you do the next Saturday?
Ask Shaul and what's happening.
Yeah, that'll be
Oh.
decided by Shalom.
That's
Shaul. Yeah, so ideally that's the one year that even the Hasidim that pray very late on Shabbat and every other day, they actually wake up early to go pray because you have to have chametz before the time runs out. So and then the same thing that we said with the tablecloth and everything, you do the same thing in the day. Now, after you're done with eating the second meal and once you really got rid of all your chametz, everything is stored to be sold already. Everything is set up. Then you make the decoration. Kol chamira deika birshuti, and that's the Haggadot of Pesach have it. The machzorim of Shalosh Regalim have it, and they have the decoration in there. I don't have it on me right now, but that decoration is there, and a person makes that decoration, and once they do that, then they basically got rid of all the chametz. And if, let's say, a person has a few crumbs, as long as it's not a kazait amount, a olive amount of chametz, then it's considered covered as far as that decoration, and it's considered dust. And that's what happens regarding this year. Now, what about the third meal? What should a person do for the third meal? So there's two things. The Ben Ish Chai says a person can eat fruits, and also because we don't consider egg matzah as matzah, a person can also make a meal, the third meal, on matzah, and it has to be before around, I want to say 3-4 o'clock, because you can't do it close to the end of Shabbat because you have to savor your appetite for the Pesach Seder. So fine. So that's the idea. Now matzah, regular matzah, you can't eat this Shabbat. Ashkenazim don't eat matzah from the start of Rosh Chodesh already. So already a few weeks already they haven't been eating matzah. By Sfaradim, from Erev Pesach, meaning this Shabbat, you can't eat the matzah until Saturday night when you do the Seder. So that is the idea so that is basically the guide on Shabbat, this coming Shabbat. Any questions on that? Let me see if I left anything out. Any questions on that? There's also Ta'anit Bechorot. Someone asked me last time about Ta'anit Bechorot, fasting for this. It's Thursday and just Thursday, because Friday we can't fast. So Thursday is the fast, from the morning to the night. It could be that if a person hears a siyum, then they could get exempt from it, but it's a day fast, not a night fast. It's only from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. So and it's on Thursday this year because Erev Pesach is on Shabbat. Usually it would be on Erev Pesach. Okay, so that's the Shabbat going into Pesach. That's the guide on that. Again, a person should be very careful to make sure that there are no crumbs left over, that there's nothing left over, that everything is clean by Shabbat. Ideally, a person should be aware of it before Shabbat comes in to get rid of everything, whether it's to get the trash out to the curb so that they take it or whatnot. The only thing that a person should have is the chametz that they need for the 2 meals on Shabbat. So now, if no questions, so let's go now to the first night of Pesach. So first night of Pesach in Tfilat Arvit, we say Hallel with a bracha. Hallel is we make the praises. We say Hallel usually on Rosh Chodesh and other times of the year. Now Ashkenazim make a blessing on the Hallel. I'm talking about the men specifically. Ashkenazim on Rosh Chodesh, they make a blessing on the Hallel. Sfaradim, women, Sfaradim only make a blessing on certain times of the year, which includes the Yom Tov, like Pesach, the first 2 days of Pesach, first 2 days of Shavuot, first 2 days of Sukkot, first 2 days of the days of Shmini Atzeret, all the days of Chanukah, and that's it. Now, women do not make this blessing at all because it's a time-bound mitzvah like we talked about last time. So women don't make the blessing, but they can still recite the Tehillim from these praises. They can recite it. They can recite the full Hallel without a blessing and without the end blessing also. And so what we do is we recite it. We recite the Hallel at night on the first 2 nights of Pesach. Now, when we recite the Hallel, when we come to shul and they make the blessing of the Hallel, a person should have in mind when they make the blessing that it's going to cover them for the time when they say Hallel in the Haggadah, because we also say the same Hallel we say in the prayer, we say it in the Haggadah later on. So a person should have in mind that it covers them also for the Haggadah. Now, so that's the Arvit. Is also the Mizmor for Pesach. Also, we say that, and that's the Tfilat Arvit. Also in Shachrit, we also say Hallel again. Also, so now candle lighting. This is more for the ladies. Candle lighting. How do we do candle lighting? So on Shabbat, we make this Shabbat we do candle lighting just for Shabbat. Ladik ner shel Shabbat. We do that and we light our candles. A person should now have, because you're going to need this for the other 2 days, a person should buy, you can get it in stores, a 3-day candle that stays lit for 3 days, meaning you light it before Shabbat and it stays lit for the next 3 days. Why? Because you need to light candles for Yom Tov. So what you do is when Shabbat comes out, you can light your candles for Yom Tov. And now let's just clarify, and we said this last time. There are 2 melachot that a person is allowed to do on. There are 2 types of work that a person is allowed to do on Yom Tov that they're not allowed to do on Shabbat. One is cooking, transferring fire, and then the other is carrying for a purpose. If a person wants to carry outside in the public domain and there's a purpose for it, a person is allowed to on Yom Tov, not on Shabbat. So when Shabbat comes out, a person can transfer the fire that's already lit and transfer to light the candles for Yom Tov. And when they make the blessing, they make Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddeshanu b'Mitzvotav v'Tzivanu Ladlik Ner Shel Yom Tov. Now, the biggest question that said, do we make a Shechianu? Sfaradi ladies do not make a Shechianu. And if they did make a Shechianu by accident, then the Shechianu in Kiddush they should not say Amen to. So why don't we make a Shechianu? Because in the Kiddush, we already make a Shechianu. Another thing that this year also applies is that a person has to have a 2-wick candle, ideally, if they can get one that will die out quickly, for Havdalah, because we have to make Havdalah in the Kiddush because we're coming out of Shabbat. So what do we do? So we'll go over it. Let's see. So as far as the Kiddush, a person, so with the Kiddush, 2 things. So we make Baruch Ata Borei Pei HaGefen, then we make a blessing on the Kiddush, חג המצות הזה, יום טוב מקרא קודש הזה, זמן חירותנו באהבה מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, etc. Then we finish with Baruch Ata Hashem, Mekadesh Yisrael v'azemanim. Then you don't make the Shechianu yet. You do the Havdalah. You have the candles together and you make Borei Meorei Ha'esh, Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Borei Meorei Ha'esh. Then you make the blessing on the Havdalah, Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu Asher Kiddush. What is it? Hamabdil ben Kodesh. Then we end the blessing with Hamabdil ben Kodesh leKodesh, because it's not Kodesh lechol, it's Kodesh to another Kodesh, because you're going from Shabbat to Yom Tov. Then you make the Shechiah at the end, and that's only the first night because we're coming out of Shabbat. The next night you make a Shechianu still, but no Havdalah. So that's fine. There was another thing I forgot to mention in the Tfilat Arvit. If anybody prays Arvit for the men, we say V'todienu in the Shmona Esrei because we're coming out of Shabbat. Any questions on that? Okay, so we got through the Kiddush, Havdalah, and everything. Fine. Now we talked about this over the last on the Haggadah, but I'll just go through it a bit more. Therefore, a person has to have 4 cups of wine, ideally wine. If they need to use grape juice, they can use grape juice, but ideally wine. This also applies to women. Not just men, it applies to women. Why? Because they were part of the miracle. We know in Sukkot that a woman doesn't have to sit in the sukkah if she doesn't want to. If she wants to sit in her home, she could sit in her home. She doesn't even have to, if a woman, they don't have to sit in the sukkah. They could. It's a merit for it. There's a reward for it, but they don't have to sit in the sukkah. They also don't have to shake lulav in the talk. They could if they want to without a blessing if they want to. Now, what about Passover? So Passover more stringent. A woman has to drink the 4 cups and also has to make sure that they recline when they drink the 4 cups. As we said in the previous lecture, if a person did not recline to the left and drink, then they did not fulfill the obligation of the 4 cups. So the first cup is in the kiddush. So if a person, let's say, did not recline and drink the first cup in the kiddush, then they did not fulfill the first cup, but they fulfilled the kiddush. So they have to fulfill the first cup again. And there's 4 cups throughout the entire Haggadah, and we talked about it. Another thing to mention when it comes to the amount of wine a person has to have, ideally 5 ounces, and ideally a person should try to drink it, like chug it very, not quickly, but chug it continuously to finish. That's the best way to do it. If a person can't, but no, that's the best way to do it, and 5 ounces as well. The same thing also applies to the matzot. When we eat the matzah by the Pesach Seder, a person has to recline when eating the matzah also. And they have to also eat an amount of, we said 50, what do we say? 30 grams within a few minutes. So a person has to try to eat it quickly, 30 grams. Now, what most people do is they put a scale, then they measure. They measure the matzot and the maror also to measure the amount that is to fulfill the obligation. Because if a person didn't eat the required obligation, they did not fulfill the obligation of eating the matzah. This, I can't. It's a bit big. There's measurements for it. There's like a pamphlet you can get that has the measurement of the maror and the matzah. By the way, the best matzot to get ideally is shmura matzah. Even better if a person can get soft matzah. They're bringing them from Israel now. I got soft matzah. It's very good to get for Sfaradim. It's the best to. But if not, shmura matzah is usually the best. It tastes better. The Hasidim. I don't know. I like the shmura, but whatever. It's better the shmura matzah. At least for you want to have the best. Ideally, you want to try to have the best things for the seder, especially for the seder. The best matzah, the best maror, the best wine. You want to try to have the best things for that. Also, there's another thing that a person should pour for another person instead of pouring for themselves when they pour the cups, because we're guests we're guests at the table in a sense. So that's the whole thing. The maror, when the person does not have to recline when eating maror, they just can eat the maror, but they have to have an amount of also around I think it's 20 grams, I believe, for maror. You have to have enough. Then you have the korech, which is you put charoset and the maror and the matzah together, and you have to have 30 grams of matzah ideally, or for I believe it's either 30 or 50 grams of matzah, and then for 20 grams best of maror, and then you eat it together, reclining to the left. And then the afikoman, which is the afikoman, which is broken before we start the magid. That piece of afikoman, usually it's not enough. If you have 10 people at your table, that small afikoman is not enough to cover for everybody. So what do? You give a person a piece of the afikoman, each person a piece, you split it up, and then they eat the piece of the afikoman reclining to the left, and then they eat some more matzah to add to it, and that covers the afikoman. And as we said before, once a person eats the afikoman at the Pesach Seder, then you cannot eat anything else anymore besides the other 2 cups left, and water if needed. And also, as we said before, that a person should try to eat the afikoman at the Seder meal before halachic midnight, before chatzot laila. That is the best time to do it. So usually another thing, kalpas. I forgot to mention this. The kalpas that we do in the beginning, a person just dips it and eats a small piece of kalpas, and they make hadama. We don't eat too much kalpas, because then becomes a doubt whether we have to make a after blessing. So we only eat a bit, so that we don't need to. So that's kalpas also.
You dip that in salt water or lemon?
Salt water, yeah. Usually most people do salt water, yes. That's usually the idea. There's also the Korban Chagiga, also that's done after the meal. Zecher Korban Chagiga. So we have yeah, and then you have also the Korban Pesach. Now we explained everything in the Haggadah more or less. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions on regarding the Seder? בסדר, we're just... ברוך השם. ברוך השם. ברוך השם. Okay. Thank you. Baruch Hashem. Okay, fine. So that's basically the whole thing with Pesach. That person should be very, very careful with these things, to have the enough amount of matzah, enough amount of wine, enough amount of stuff. And again, if a person should try to get a good type of wine. Usually, most people do dry wine. I like sweet. I can't do dry, so I do sweet. You could do also sweet, but better wine than grape juice, and of course the best 5 ounces. And as far as the matzot, we said that all these things, again, drinking, reclining to the left, not to the right, not straight, to the left. The malol, obviously straight you could do, but everything else, reclining to the left. And if a person didn't do it, then they didn't fulfill the obligation. So that's the Pesach Seder sort of. Any questions regarding the Pesach Seder? Just wanna we cover everything. Okay, fine. So that's Pesach Seder. Tfilat Shachrit, we say Hallel with a blessing, and then there also a person should have a meal in a day, just like we do. So just to clarify, Yom Tov, Shabbat, there's 3 meals for the whole day. There's one at night, one in the day, and the afternoon meal before the end of the Shabbat. On Yom Tov, there's only 2 meals required. There's the night meal and the day meal. So even on Pesach, the first 2 days of Pesach, a person should have a day meal, and there's no seder to it. You make kiddush, have a motzi with matzah, of course, and then you have your meat and then all the other stuff. So that's the day meal, and we do the same thing again Sunday night also. So that's the thing. So again, kadesh. So the set of steps: kadesh, uchatz, kapatz, yachatz, magid, ochza, motzi matzah, marok, korech, shulchan, orech, safun, barech, halel, nirtzach. So those are the steps of the Haggadah, and we talked about it in the other shiur. So that's the first 2 days of Pesach. I hope I covered. Oh, one more thing. We in Tefillah, we know that we have what's called Moed Atal and Mashi Baruch or Moed Geshem. So on the first day of Pesach, on Sunday morning, we switch back from Mashi Baruch to Moed Geshem in the second blessing of the Amidah, back to Moed Atal, and we say Tikkun Atal before the second Nashrei. So that's another thing to mention. Now, if a person, let's say a person forgot and he said Mashi Baruch Moed Geshem, and he finished the whole Amidah prayer with Mashi Baruch Moed Geshem, they have to repeat. But if, let's say, what about the opposite? Let's say right now, when we switch to Mashi Baruch Moed Geshem, a person said Moed Atal instead of Mashi Baruch, and they finished it like that, then they don't need to repeat, because Moed Atal is a holier time. But if somebody didn't say Moed Atal and said Mashi Baruch Moed Geshem after Tfilat Musaf of Sunday morning, then they have to repeat the entire Shmoneh Esrei from the beginning. Just to clarify. Yeah.
That's the first thing I didn't know.
Yeah.
Shmoneh Esrei from the beginning.
Oh, we'll talk about that at the end. First, let's get into so second day of Pesach. Before Haron used to say that to do it after the Seder, I don't necessarily agree with him, not because I don't agree with him because you may forget to do it. Now, the question is, do women count the Omer? No, women should not at all count the Omer. Not even. First of all, with a blessing, for sure not. It's 100% the bracha lebatala. A woman should not count. And the mekubalim. So halachically, we're saying the mekubalim, the Kabbalists say that to count the Omer, a woman should not do. However, a woman should know. So, and we'll talk about this more in depth. So now Chol HaMoed. What about Chol HaMoed? So you have first 2 days, then you have another couple days until Shabbat and Sunday. Those are the second days. So all those days, are normal, are sort of normal days, but not exactly. A person ideally on Chol HaMoed should not work unless it's a absolute loss that they're going to lose money on a deal or something like that. Then they're allowed to. In my business specifically, what I do is I don't do any work, but if there's an emergency that comes up in somebody's business, then I take care of it because that somebody's going to have a loss. It's going to be a loss for that person if I don't take care of it. So that I take care of. But to each, to whatever, depending on their business and whatnot. But ideally, if a person can avoid working or close down their business, depending on what it is or whatnot, then that's the best thing to do. Most food places, obviously, because they have chametz, they usually give the non-Jewish workers a week off, so that's their vacation. So yeah.
A lot of people, they go by the swimming pool in Miami Beach. They used to go to Miami Beach and everyone's at the pool. There's
that's another question. Anyway, there's another question whether Pesach. The what do you mean, the kiddush or the
we need the shank bone and we need
some people use the shank bone for the korban pesach. There's no blessing on that. The things we need here, I think I put it here. You need this law, roasted lamb bone that's not eaten, a bitzah for the korban chagiga, maror, which is the lettuce, the charoset, which is goodbye. Charoset, you need the kalpas, which is parsley or celery, and then you should have also extra maror for the korech and matzah, obviously, as we said. So those are the things for the seder plate. The brachot we say, just one sec. The brachot we say really is the kiddush, and there are blessings also in the Haggadah that we make, like Gal Yisrael. The person, usually the man of the table can make it for everybody, or I'm not sure if women can say these blessings. That I have to find out. But a man could, if another man is sitting at the table, they can make it for themselves, or they can make, or they could fulfill the obligation with those blessings with the head of the table. Besides kiddush, the head of the table usually does for everybody. Now Ashkenazim make another hagefen in the second cup, and also in the fourth cup. We don't do that. We only make hagefen for the first cup, which the head of the table has in mind, and then the third cup we do because we said birkat hamazon. So that's usually how it goes. But there are some blessings that are said, and the Hallel is also recited. So there are two blessings at by the second cup. There's a blessing that they say Gaskal Israel, and then by the fourth cup is Melech Mulad B'Shachot after Nishmat Kol Chai and the rest of the Hallel. And you can see it in the Haggadah. There's Haggadot here. I don't know if we still have them over here, but fine. So Chol HaMoed. Any questions on that? Just
quick question.
Yeah.
How come Ashkenazi can? How come Iraqi Jewish Seder we used to have rice? I actually did it with your mom when she first came over.
Yeah.
But Ashkenazi can have rice, but Sephardic do have rice.
Because they hold differently. That they hold that. They have the established custom minhag that for them it's considered chametz, even though realistically is it that I don't know, but it's for them it's considered. So they have the established custom not to eat what's called kitniyot, rice and stuff like that. There are also Sfaradim that also have this. Moroccans have this also. Moroccans don't eat kitniyot. There are some Persians that don't eat kitniyot. There are some people, just as a stringency, do not eat kitniyot. By Iraqis, there's also some that do and some that don't. Rav Menashe Allah Shalom did eat kitniyot. So he did. So that's why I myself still eat rice. But if he didn't, then I probably wouldn't have. I would start not eating rice.
Better safe than sorry.
My wife, other kitniyot did not eat, but rice she did eat.
But the rice, they observe it.
Yeah, you have to examine it. Yes, you have to check for rice. You have to check for rice. By the way, with the lettuce also, you have to check for bugs and everything with fruits. You have to check it very, very thoroughly. Yes.
The older daughter is married to an Ashkenazi.
Okay.
No,
So
it's
what?
not.
Oh, so that's a good question. If
Yeah,
so
that's
if a
what
woman
I'm saying.
wait if a Ashkenazi woman marries Sfaradi, then she takes upon her husband's minhagim. So therefore, oh, so then she can't. That's what happened to one of the daughters of married Moroccan. So Rav Menashe, one of Rav Menashe's daughters married. Well, one's married to Ashkenazi, but one's married to Moroccan, for example, and she doesn't eat kidney.
Yeah, that's what's the name.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Let's not say name because it's being recorded. What? No, you just say Zecher Koban Chagiga, and you can eat the egg. It's already at the meal. When after you said Hamotzi Alachilat Matzah, at the meal you can already put out the egg and say Zecher Koban Chagiga when you have your meat, your fish, and all that other stuff out. However, one thing that we should mention: when you eat a hard-boiled egg, this is a totally different thing, but in general, this applies all year round. Cut it into half and then eat it. We don't eat a hard-boiled egg whole because that's what avelim mourners do. We only do that
What's that word? Avaline?
avelim, a
That's a
mourner,
word.
mourner.
That's a new word for a lot. I know he doesn't know it.
Right. So an avel is someone that's a
Avelim?
yeah,
Say it slowly.
an avelim.
Avelim.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah, I know.
for
I didn't know.
so somebody that's a mourner. Usually that's how they eat eggs. So when we by Tisha B'Av, hopefully we won't have it this year, but by Tisha B'Av, when there's before we get into Tisha B'Av on a weekday, we eat the eggs whole versus half. Or sometimes somebody saying Shiva. There is a minhag to do it. Yeah, some people sitting Shiva also do it like that. Yeah.
With the Iraqi eggs, we chop up,
Learn something.
mush it, and put salt and pepper in it.
Yeah, you could no. So that's fine. No, that's fine to do that. You should cut it in half, but you should always cut it in half, not eat it whole. Right, whatever. Yeah. So anyway, that's the whole thing. So that's the Koban Chagiga. Any more questions on that, and then we'll get back into Chol HaMoed. Any more questions on that?
Great.
Oh, thank you. So Chol HaMoed. So again, a person should try not to work. If they have to, then if it's emergency and it's a business loss, then they can work. However, there are certain things. The person should ideally not write. Let's say a person has to sign a check or sign a signature, they should try to do it in a awkward fashion. Like if you write with your left hand, then do it like this. We had this problem on Sukkot, my wife and I. We whatever, because flights are way too expensive to Israel these days. So when we went, we had to come back during Chol HaMoed Sukkot. So what we did was my wife had to sign for the car rental to return it. So she did it. She wrote in an awkward fashion. It's called a shinui. In a strange way, she signed the thing because you don't want to cause balagan, and then you say if you don't sign, you don't want. So we didn't want to you don't want to cause a desecration of Hashem's name. So we signed it in an awkward fashion, and we went on our way. So if somebody needs to, but if somebody should avoid writing. However, what if somebody's writing, what if somebody's learning Torah, learning Gemara, and they want to write an annotation of something, then that's allowed to write regularly. That's allowed. But other things like that, a person should try not to
I never
think.
heard that before.
Yeah.
Only things I never heard before. I thought I knew so much.
Oh,
And
all right,
more I know.
we always have more to learn.
No, I never heard of it.
Anyway, so yeah, that's the idea. So a person should avoid writing. Also, ideally, how should a person be dressed during Chol HaMoed? Ideally, with their Shabbat garments, Shabbat clothes. A person should wear nicer clothes for Chol HaMoed versus during the other regular days. As well as another thing, do we put on tefillin during Chol HaMoed? No, Sfaradim do not put on tefillin for the entire time of Chol HaMoed. Yeah.
Ashkenazi do.
Ashkenazi do until Musaf. Until Musaf they put it on. And they don't make a blessing on the tefillin like every other day. They don't make a blessing on it. Sfaradim, the Zohar says that we go by the Zohar, and the Zohar says that a person, because it's considered Kodesh, a person should not at all put on tefillin. So therefore, we do not put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed. So until after Pesach, no tefillin. So that is Chol HaMoed. Also in the tefillah, a person has to say Ya'aleh v'Yabo by Ritzeh, by the blessing of Ritzeh. A person has to add Ya'aleh v'Yabo v'Yagiv v'Chag HaMatzot hazeh Yom Mikra Kodesh hazeh. On Yom Tov we say Yom Tov Mikra Kodesh hazeh. But on Chol HaMoed we say Yom Mikra Kodesh hazeh. A person has to add that to the prayer. If a person did not add that to the Amida prayer, then they have to repeat it from the beginning. I'm not sure about Arvit, but Shachrit and Mincha, yes. They have to repeat it from the beginning. Now, there's also Tfilat Musaf on all the days of Chol HaMoed, and that is basically the same like from the Yom Tov. That is the Tfilah. So there's Musaf every day, there's Torah, comes out every day of Chol HaMoed. So that's something to know. Also, Hallel, when we say the Hallel of Chol HaMoed, we don't say it with a blessing anymore. And also the second days after this is the last 2 days of Pesach, we also don't say Hallel with a blessing anymore. Only the first 2 days. So that's Chol HaMoed. And no chametz, of course. No chametz, no this. Usually by Chol HaMoed, everything gets easier. Now it's the harder weeks. Any questions regarding Chol HaMoed?
What is Nasi?
Huh?
Nasi, Nasi. Is that a prayer? Or?
Nasi?
Nasi, Prince.
Nasi is prince, but prayer, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's prayer for the first 13 days of Nisan.
Oh, the Nisiim, yeah. That's before. That finishes on the 13th. So that we say it in it's psukim from the Torah that we recite based on the Nisiim in Parashat I'm forgetting the parasha. Naso, from Parashat Naso. We also say the 8 of them on Chanukah also, and that's the Torah reading. So we recite it after Alenu Shabech and Shachrit. Most people do it. That's the Nesiim, and that's for the first days from Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the 13th of Nisan. Also, another thing, Birkat Ilanot, the blessing of the fruits and the fruit trees. A person should do that before the end of this month, from Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the end of this month. And the question if you could do it on Chol HaMoed, that I'm not sure. But from a person has till the end of the month.
But
Anyway,
you go in front of any tree that has fruit and say the
you have
prayer.
2 fruit trees that have fruits. Yeah, something. Yeah. Okay. So Chol HaMoed, I think we covered pretty much. Now let's get to the second days of Pesach. So the second days of Pesach, we said no Hallel at night and a half Hallel in the day. Now, what's so specific about? So what is this? The last 2 days. The first 2 days was when we got out of Egypt. The second days is when the Kriyat Yam Suf happened. The splitting of the seas happened at that point. So that's what happened then. Now, we recite that in the Torah reading on Shabbat. On Shabbat is going to be the Shirat Hayam. We're going to recite the Shirat Hayam, and there is a custom to get up very early in the morning and recite.
Sorry.
Huh?
There's none. Only in
The
the
water.
kitchen. In the kitchen.
Forget about it.
No, right here.
In the
Okay, I don't want to
kitchen.
interrupt them, yeah.
Make
No,
it right.
so
Make it
so
right.
anyway,
Yeah.
there's a custom to recite the passage of the Shirat Hayam, of the splitting of the sea, very early in the morning before the day starts. So some people wake up early and do it. And then there's some people that will even go into the synagogue, open up the Torah, and recite it from there. I did it one year.
So what's the beginning of
Vayosha,
Vayosha.
the shirat, the splitting of the sea, the passage of the splitting. We say it in Tefillah. Vayosha, metasefat hayam, right? Az yashir Moshe, ubnei Yisrael et hashira azot, right? That is the shirat hayam. So we say that on Shabbat. That's the second days, and we have matzot, and we have Shabbat. We're gonna have three sudat because it's Shabbat, and there's a inyan of having sudat Mashiach, which is at the end. Some people do a third meal on the last day of Pesach, depending on whether here in Eretz Yisrael. Because for sudat, it's called sudat Mashiach. It's a Hasidic thing that people do. So that is basically the end of Pesach. Now, again, as we said, a person has to make sure to wait until the chametz is brought back to eat chametz. Then, so and that's basically
For that.
what to.
That you getting back your comment.
No, you just wait. The rabbi has to confirm that it's bought back before you eat, because if you eat it, you're not over on eating chametz on Pesach, but you're over on stealing somebody's stuff. Yeah. Another thing, a person has to be careful what they buy from. Again, as we said, that if a Jew owned chametz on Pesach, it's not kosher. So a person has to look and be very careful what they're buying the next few weeks, because to make sure that it wasn't owned by a Jew. A person has to be very, very careful with this.
You are more limited than us. Not everybody does what you're saying, or they do what you're supposed to do.
I don't do what everybody else does.
No, but are we sinning
What? By what?
by, let's say, not selling or leaving your hamet in the house and just store it somewhere else? Or
If
like you said, you have to have hamet, you have to buy it, or
right, sell and buy. So if you just store chametz in the closet and lock it up and you don't do a sale for that, then that is a avera of owning chametz on Pesach. And all that chametz, let's say you have a whole garage worth of chametz, it's all completely not kosher. All not kosher. Now, so that's what we said. And also, but if a person sells it and then then it's fine because it wasn't hit. He didn't own it.
so,
As we,
but you should have to put it all together in one area. It could be upstairs and
you have to specify on the contract where you're putting everything. But let's say you're not in your house for Pesach, you could say the whole house. Any food in the whole house is the goys, is the non-Jews. So that's a way of selling the chametz. Any chametz, you could say any chametz, because I mean, I would say any food, and I'll tell you why, because I'm not going to be in my house for the whole thing. Everybody's different. Some people are going to be in their houses, so you could say whatever in the closet or in the other fridge, let's say, is yours. You could do that, and it's all chametz, and basically still, it's the non-Jews and it's not yours. Now, the biggest thing is that a person has to make sure that they put everything inside. Let's say they're selling the entire closet in the sale. I remember during Corona, I put my car in the sale because one, I didn't have time to clean it because it was Corona and I wasn't allowed out of the house, whatever. I was living with my parents. So I put the car in the sale because like, I'm not going to use it anyway. And I didn't. So I put it in the sale. And that's fine. Then you don't have to clean it. But otherwise, you have to clean it. If you're going to use your car, if you're going to use any of the things you're going to use, you have to make sure it's clean. Make sure everything needs to be clean. Now, as far as let's say you put all your chametz in a closet, everything is in there. Now, let's say you forgot about something and you want to put in the closet after the sale's done. You can't. You're still owning it, so you have to go and burn it. Ideally, I had this. I'll tell you a story that happened to me once. I went, by the way, another thing just before I get into this, let's say you threw out every food in your house or everything that you know is chametz in your house. Let's say you threw out everything. Mamash, you threw out everything and you know for sure, 100% sure, you threw out everything. You should still do a sale just in case. You should still, just in case.
what if somebody is allergic to matzah and they have to eat the bread?
There hasn't ever been a case of, I've never heard really of a case of that. There is gluten-free matzah. There are gluten-free matzahs, but again, I've never heard a case like this.
An elderly that doesn't want to eat matzah.
Elderly that doesn't want elderly that doesn't want to eat matzah, that's a different thing. If it depends. If it's really a life risk that they have to, let's say there's a life risk that they have to forget about Pesach for a second. Let's say that there's a life risk that person has to eat meat that's not even kosher, pig, that they have to eat because that's the only meat they have and they don't have enough time to get kosher meat or kosher whatever they need to eat, and it's a life risk, then the person is allowed to eat that non-kosher stuff and even make a blessing on it if it's a life risk. And the person has to speak to rabbis. What? Yeah. The person has to be, a person has to be very, very, ask a rabbi and all these things. So if a person just doesn't want to eat matzah and wants to eat chametz and doesn't care to eat matzah, then they're over on eating chametz. Then they're liable on eating chametz on Pesach. And that's just then that person is just being stubborn, I guess. I don't know. But really a person also needs to realize, as we said before, eating chametz on Pesach, there's a serious impurity in the chametz that a person is eating, and it's a very serious prohibition, serious punishment of karet to eat chametz on Pesach. A person has to be very careful of these things. That's why we separate ourselves from it, and we separate our possessions from it. There's when we say in the kavanot for the biur chametz and the finding of the chametz and the burning of the chametz, it talks about the shells. A person has what's called shells. This is more in the Kabbalah field, in the Kabbalistic field. A person has what's called shells on them, and when they break those shells, then their soul, their neshama, opens up more towards Hashem, right? So when we get rid of our chametz, that's exactly part of what we're doing. We're breaking those shells. That's a Kabbalistic concept. But the Torah, a person has to sell and not eat chametz. Yes, a question.
I never thought about this. Could you eat kitchery on Passover?
I don't know what it's
I
made of
never thought,
exactly.
do you eat
Red
red
lentils.
lentils? You don't know what kitchery is?
No, I know I just don't know what it's made of. I had kitchen growing up. I don't know. I don't want to give a suck on that because I'm not a Rav, but could be, but could not be. But again, ask what it has to make sure that it's not within 18 minutes.
Oh,
being
so
cooked with
you-
18 minutes. Yeah, yeah. Even with even when we make the soft matzahs, a person has to be very careful how they make it so it doesn't become chametz. Also, that's why you yeah.
All
So
my aunt told me you can't eat it on Saturday.
what?
All my mother and my aunt told me you can't eat it on Saturday.
Eat what?
Kitchery on Shabbat.
Oh, I don't know.
So leave it morning, right, Tina?
In gen.
Morning.
Oh, maybe I don't know.
Morning as in the day AM or
No.
morning as in
Morning is
Saturday?
MOUR.
Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, so once as I forgot, I got kind of lost track. If a person forgot to put a box of chametz into the closet where they did the sale, then they have to go and burn it. So I had a story where one time I did my sale, I got rid of my chametz, I did everything, I said the decoration, everything, all the 9 yards. I was I forget where I was going. I had to go take care of some stuff, still hours before Passover, and I found that there's a mishloach manot from Purim in my trunk. That's chametz, 100% chametz. So somebody helped me start a fire. I burned some stuff up, and then I threw the rest into the water. Because at that point, you can't just throw things out. You have to burn things at that point. And I'm talking about a regular. Shabbat is a bit different. Shabbat, you could already, if you need to throw things out, you could throw things out. You could, as we said, you could flush things into the toilet, break it into pieces, flush things into the toilet, and then when it comes to, then you could spray the Windex, the tablecloths or whatnot, like we said for the Shabbat.
Down the sink drainer and not
You could, but it might get stuck. The toilet's better in that case.
But we were taught as children, you didn't take food to the toilet.
Right, for sure. There's there's a halacha. Are you allowed to eat in the bathroom? Really? No. Especially bread, for sure. A person's not allowed to eat in the bathroom. Other things, whatever. Because we're trying. So there is a law. There is a law called bal tashchit, which is basically not wasting food, especially bread. A person should not go throw bread in the trash. A person should give it to the birds. So yeah, exactly. They put on the street, or some people throw. If you live by a lake, they put it into the ocean. Some people. Where we live, I remember one guy told his son, "Take this entire sack of bread and just throw it into the ocean." That's what he did.
So it's okay to just put it out in the garbage, not flush it down the toilet.
No, you should. No, you could flush it down the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah,
No one feel.
Pesach, we're talking about Pesach is different. The laws of Bal Tashchit, of wasting food, throwing out chametz, does not apply on before Pesach. It doesn't apply. Yeah, you're. Yeah, so as we said, you have the issue of you have pitot for Shabbat this week, right? And you can't burn because you can't light a fire on Shabbat, so you can't go and burn it. So what do? You try to eat as much as the pita you can, but you still have the crumbs of the pita. So you have a disposable tablecloth, you shake it into the toilet, flush that, spray the toilet, spray the tablecloth with Windex, and then throw it into your trash, and you don't have to worry about it getting collected. And that's the best way to do it.
This closet, this car, I remember.
If you specify the whole house, then you might be. Let's say you specify the whole house, you might be selling your stuff that are kasher lePesach. If you don't if you put chametz, you could do that, but of course, always speak to a rabbi about that because they understand the sales better. And another thing, it's better as like Aaron Abraham used to do it with Mona, where he used to do it He did a sale, a verbal sale versus a written, a star sale, contract sale. It's better to, yeah, it's
Say that star?
a star.
What star?
It's a contract. It's a, no, stars in Hebrew.
Star
Star.
is contract. Again, I didn't know that.
Yeah, star is not, it's not Yiddish, it's Hebrew. Yeah. You have a, a star, you have star for many things, for selling chametz, for shmita, heter mechira. You have a star for a, what is it? What the cash advance companies use, I forget. No. They use no. It's a
They have it now.
heter iska is also star heter iska, so that they could,
No.
yeah, so that they can that they, when they do loans, it's as an investment. But whatever, the whole,
Oh,
yeah, whatever.
For this Passover, can
Fine.
you Friday night
Star.
eat matzah and say hamotzi on it?
No, because it's still, it's before Pesach, and you're not allowed to eat matzah. You can have egg matzah, and you can do hamotzi on egg matzah, but you have to eat a lot of it. But regular matzah, shmura matzah, regular matzah, something that's not egg matzah, you cannot. And by the way, Ashkenazim, even egg matzah, they're not allowed to eat. Sfaradim are allowed to, because we don't consider, Sfaradim don't consider it as matzah. However, Ashkenazim poskim, and I believe Lefi Rama, Lefi the Ashkenazi poskim, they consider egg matzah as matzah, so therefore they're not allowed to eat it.
What about shum matzah? Shum.
Shum matzah, that I'm not sure what that's made of exactly. If garlic, with garlic,
Permissibly garlic matzah.
you could, yeah. If you fry it, actually, if you fry it in oil or stuff like that, yeah, you could. So you could potentially, yeah. But it's better. Ma safta. מה השאלה? מה השאלה? יש לך שאלה? לא, okay.
Sorry.
No worries. Anyway, so that's so with egg matzah, you can eat egg matzah, and then you don't have to have actual bread. If you don't want to have bread in your house and get rid of all your bread, you could eat egg matzah. You just have to eat like a lot of it, so that it's enough for a meal, because it's considered mezonot, and that's a whole nother discussion. But the Ben Ish Chai and other poskim, they say, in Ashkenazim, they do on bread, on actual bread. You could do challah. Challah is a bit messy, so that's why we say pita to do. Yeah.
I have a couple questions, not a question, but a statement.
Okay.
Like, I don't know about your grandmother or Dina,
Okay.
but I know I do a lot of things
Yeah.
because traditional, and what my
Yeah.
mother does, like she puts rocks
All right.
in the pot.
Yeah.
And she puts every little fish that was in the whole
Right.
house
Yeah,
in the
Havana.
with the rocks. So I
Right.
don't know, and also she does things that, like, I guess her mother did. So she
Right.
tells us that a lot of this stuff, okay, to change it now, like what she's talking about, right? With the
Not necessarily
very
change.
hard to do it.
Well, it's not okay. I hear what you're saying. You're saying they're customs. Okay.
A
So-
lot of these things, I don't know about that, but a lot of these, what my mother taught me, like she
Yeah.
doesn't wash on Shabbat, so I don't wash on Shabbat.
You're not supposed to watch.
But a lot, yeah, you're not supposed to
Wash what?
clothes, but that's.
Right. No, it's laundry. Yeah, it's a prohibition. Yeah. By the way, another thing, the good you got.
I'm talking about traditional stuff, you know, traditional that I know from my mother, like, she probably learned from her parents.
Right. Well, a lot of these things that we talked about is not necessary. It's not traditional stuff. It's not really a tradition. It's more of a lot of it's the law. Yeah. It's a Torah. It's according to Torah law. Yes.
Another example, Shabbat. Summer coming, to light the candles, go to 9, 8:30. What is that? 1 8 before.
So you can light it earlier.
So you have to eat after lighting the candle, no matter what.
Well, the thing is that when you, yeah, I believe so. When you light the candles, you accept the Shabbat or the Yom Tov. Yeah, you accept. Well, there's two ways to do it. That's a whole another discussion. There's a debate between many poskim on whether, let's say, you light the candles first, then make the blessing, or you make the blessing first, then light the candles. The
first Shabbat is the only one when you light candle that you say it after.
Right. So that's a big debate. The Ben Ish Chai holds that way, and that's what my wife does also. That's what I actually was doing, like Rav Avadia, because it's not a simple thing, but it's a big debate, but there is a there are poskim that hold that you can do that.
Poskim, what's poskim?
Halachic decisors.
She
Halachic.
doesn't know, she doesn't.
Right. I'm sorry. Halachic. Yeah, I got you guys. Don't worry. No worries. You could always ask me a question. Don't worry. Halachic. They decide the. There are big rabbis with a lot of Torah knowledge that decide the halacha based the law, the practical law based on what's going on. So and based on many things that come before. So you could do it that way. Now the thing is, when you light the candles and then you make the blessing, you're accepting the holiday. So what if you want to keep doing things, or you need to go somewhere, you're going somewhere for a meal and you want to take the car and it's not Shabbat yet. So what you could do is, before you light the candles and you make the blessing, you can make a tanai and have in mind that I am not accepting yet the laws of Shabbat. Then you can light your candles, make the bracha, and then if you say you have to drive to your friend's house, whatever, you can go with your husband and drive. And
Let's say, I mean, the food you wanna warm up and cook, and it's Shabbat already, so can you do that, what you just said, and then after you eat? Before you eat, I guess after you turn off the oven, then you say the bracha for Shabbat?
If you didn't accept, if you did not accept the laws of Shabbat yet and you lit the candles, then you could still do until. But either way, the best thing to do is to cook everything and then light by candle lighting. Because in the end of the day, you can't start the meal. Let's say in the summer now, most synagogues start very early. They start at like 7 o'clock, let's say. Now, what happens is the night only comes in at like 9 o'clock. So you could start your meal. So they already prayed Alvit when it's still sunlight outside. So you could start the meal early, but you have to start the meal at sunset, around the sunset time, candle lighting time anyway. So either way, you're gonna have to get to the candle lighting point anyway before they start the meal. There's no chance of anybody able to start the meal before candle lighting. So in the end of the day, it's better to cook everything and try to finish before candle lighting. And usually at that point, candle lighting will be like around 8:15 even. When the latest I'm saying. That's what usually happens. The counting of the Omer, Sfirat Omer. So we know that in the Torah, from Pesach until Shavuot, they counted the days until Shavuot, and that's when we received the Torah, and that was how it was in the Torah. So we have, so it's a bit of a machloket here, whether it's from the Torah or from the rabbis, but we have an obligation to count also today. In today's day and age, we have a obligation to count the Omer, and it starts now. It says in the pasuk, "Mi macholat Shabbat, right?" So it says, "Mi macholat Shabbat." So some people like to think the tzdukim or the Karaites, the people who are anti the oral Torah, they like to think that by Shabbat you start counting. No, we start counting. The Chazal, the sages teach us that when it says Mimachlat Shabbat, it means the first day of Pesach. Doesn't matter whether it's on Shabbat or not. It means the first day of Pesach because Pesach is like a Shabbat. So we start counting from the second day of Pesach until Erev Shavuot, 49 days. What? No, Sunday night. Sunday night. Sunday itself, we don't count, and Saturday night, we don't count. Sunday night, we start counting and a person has to count by the end of the day. When it's light of a day, pitch black, that's when you can start counting. Now, there are a few things just to mention. Women halachically do not make a blessing and count. And as I just said before, Lefi, the Mekubalim, the Kabbalists, according to the Kabbalists, I said Mekubalim. Yes, yeah. I said it in English also, Kabbalists. So, right, no worries. So the Kabbalists, according to the Kabbalists, they say that women should not count at all. Women should not count at all. Even without a blessing. Nope, they should not count at all.
Cleansing the spirit.
No, you could do that, but you don't need to count. But you could prepare yourself in other ways, and we'll talk about that. So I'll tell you another thing. We have the minhag to do Pirkei Avot. A woman can go and learn Pirkei Avot. You don't need to count necessarily, but a man is supposed to count with a blessing each day. If a man now this is a very important thing. If a man misses one of the days, did not count whether in the day. First of all, only at night you're allowed to count with a blessing. If a person missed at night, then they can count in the day and they can make a blessing at night. However, if a person missed counting the night and the day, then they cannot count with a blessing anymore. They can only count without a blessing until Shavuot. So that's why it's very important. I need to do this myself, but I put a reminder of Sfirat Omer, counting of the Omer, and I put a reminder before Pesach to remind myself every night to count with a blessing every night. And we say now, so that's counting of the Omer. Now, what about the things that we have to keep? Yes,
No, here.
Wait,
again,
so
so
said the woman is
No
not
haircut.
allowed to bless, so can we count without the blessing?
you could, but again, the Kabbalists, the opinion of the Kabbalists, they say not to count either.
I mean, because it says this day is for love, this day is for.
Oh, so you could look into you're talking about something else. Each day has a character trait that represents it. You don't need to count, but you could learn from it. You could see what it is and take it upon yourself. But that doesn't necessarily mean you need to count, but you could look at it. That's not a problem. But to count and say Hayom, right? But to say Hayom blank Ba'omer, you don't need to say. Well, a woman doesn't need to say. Yeah, and it's recommended not to. But a man should. A man should count it. Now, the minhag I remember here is that we count with a blessing at night, and then we remind ourselves what day it is in the day. And also another thing is that if a person did not count, a person should not say what day it is until they count. They should say what day it was yesterday. That's just another thing. Now, the laws that apply during the Omer that we do. Now, why do we have certain laws during Sfirat Omer, during the counting of the Omer? It's because Rabbi Akiva, the Tana, Rabbi Akiva, his was it 30,000 students died during this time. Now, and they and no, that's not that.
Another tragedy.
That's another tragedy. Yeah.
Never went.
Right. So the 30,000 students of Rabbi Akiva were lost, which is a lot in the matter of 49 days.
Revolt against the Romans, that thing.
That's different. That's also different. So that's why we have the the rabbinical obligation as far as men go to not cut hair, not listen women not listen to music, and stuff like that. What? Yeah, no parties, no wedding. Yeah, no weddings. There, bar mitzvah, yeah, because it's the time. Yeah, but a brit milah, you can have music. If you have a brit milah during Sfirat Omer, you're allowed to get a haircut, and you're allowed to have music. The haircut doesn't apply for women, by the way, only for men. Yeah, doesn't apply for women. Yeah. Doesn't apply for
How
women.
about cutting nails?
Cutting nails only Chol Hamoed. That's a question, but the rest of you could cut nails. By the way, even on the Omer, a man can cut nails also. No, no. That's no. Shave for until the 34th day of the Omer, until the 34th, which is after day after Lag BaOmer. Then the Kabbalists, the Mekubalim say different. The Mekubalim hold from Erev Pesach to Erev Shavuot not to cut any hair, and that's what some people do. But and it's a very nice. It's based on the Arizal, who was a Kabbalist. The Arizal holds that way, and the Ben Ish Chai also brings that. So that is for people that are more stringent. But according to the law, the letter of the law, the halacha, the letter of the law, only until the 34th day for Sfaradim. That's how it is. There are some people that start this. Sfaradim, it's from Erev Pesach until the 34th day of the Omer, which is the day after Lag BaOmer. That's Sfaradim. So that's basic. No. They could cut that day, and then from then on they back to normal. Yeah. But as far as but there are some people that do the Kabbalistic opinion, and they wait from Erev Pesach to Erev Shavuot. I know people like this, and it's a nice thing to do if somebody could do it. If it's gonna be a whole thing. Now, what if somebody has a bleat? What if somebody tries to do from Erev Pesach to Erev Shavuot, not cut their hair at all, their beard or anything, and they have a bleat. They had a baby, Baruch Hashem, Mazel Tov, and they have a bleat. So they have to make a annulment of vows, hatarat nedarim, annulment of vows, and then they could get a haircut before the day of the bleat. They're allowed to get a haircut. Also, there is a law. Also, I saw that if a person remarries his divorced wife, he also is allowed to have the wedding during the Omer and have music. Only that case. In other weddings, no. Other weddings after the thing they could have. So that's basically some of the laws. Oh, now here's an interesting thing. Why did Kadosh Baruch Hu decide for the 30,000?
Hakadosh Baruch Hu means a blessed Holy One. He's God.
Right. So
That's
why did Hashem and Kadosh Baruch Hu decide that during Sfilat Omer, during the counting of the Omer, that all these 30,000 students would die? It could have been any other time of the year.
It was on the island of Cyprus, I think. There was a revolt on Cyprus.
Well, no, that's a different thing.
So when did the
The 30,000 students who died, they just died all of a sudden because of they didn't have what's called um
Is it a plague?
no, it was a plague that came upon them, but it was because they didn't have respect for each other. And we could talk about that in a later
Was it
time.
Israel or Cyprus?
It was in Israel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Some stuff was in
Right,
Cyprus.
so that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So, but why at this time of year? Why not a different time of year? Why did it have to be in this time of year? So we learned from this that it's a time that actually Sfilat Omer is a time of judgment. It's a time for a person to be careful what they do, and also to really grow and improve on themselves. Just like Elul, there's a few times we have this. We have Elul right before Rosh Hashanah. We have Shovavim, which is the weekly parshas from Shemot until Mishpatim, which covers all of Yetziat Mitzrayim, which we just read a couple weeks ago. And then you have also,
That's Shema.
well, no, that's different.
You
Kriyat
also say, well, what did I do wrong today? Please forgive me. And
That yeah, that's different. But that we're talking about what. But these times specifically, are even more. Hakadosh Baruch Hu helps a person much more, gives more strength to a person to really repent on these times, especially Sfirat Omer, and we count the days leading to Shavuot. So it's 7 weeks, which is 49 days, and after the 49th day, the last day, a person so then we get to Shavuot. So that's the thing. Okay, fine. So I will stop the recording here. And then if anybody